Ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to now tell you that at the moment we're going to have a public forum that will precede the council meeting, and the public forum starts the same way as a council meeting. So I'll go through the rules of the public forum in a moment with the help from the General Manager, but I remind all people here attending this meeting that it has been webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. A recording of the meeting is available, and the public forum on the internet, and is required to be available for 12 months. Private recordings, including taking photographs by members of the public gallery, are not allowed. This disallowance of recording, which includes taking photographs, is to maintain the integrity of the meeting's proceedings. All members of the Kempsey Shire community are welcome to the public forum and the council meeting to observe. I ask you, please refrain from interjecting or undertaking any behaviour that will stop councillors from undertaking the important task of decision making. Please ensure all devices like mobile phones are now on silent mode. So on behalf of all councillors and council staff, I welcome everyone in the public gallery here today and observing live on the internet as well. The councillors in attendance are Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Arthur Bain, Councillor Kinney Ring, Councillor Anthony Patterson, Councillor Scott Butterfield, Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, Councillor Simon Ferguson, and Councillor Kerry Riddington. Council staff in attendance are Mr. Craig Milburn, General Manager, Mr. Michael Jackson, Director of Operations and Planning, Mr. Steve Mitchell, Director Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Daniel Thorogood, Manager Government and Information Services, or Governance, he's not the government, I apologise Mr. Thorogood, Governance and Information Services, Ms. Mel Pedersen, who's the Coordinator Government and Information Services, as well as Sian Hunter, who's enabling us to make Governance Officer. Official title. Thank you, Sian, for being here. We're now going to commence the public forum part of today's gathering, and I would ask the General Manager to outline the rules that we would hope our forum speakers and the councillors will follow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, everyone. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address the council. This time is strictly enforced. Speakers at the public forum must not digress from the item on the agenda that you've been applied to address council on. If the speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so. If they fail to observe the direction of the chair to remain on topic, the speaker will be no longer heard. The councillor may, through the chairperson, ask questions of the speaker, and the speaker has no obligation to answer that, but they must answer. If they do answer, you have 1 minute to answer that. The questions from the councillors need to be succinct and direct. Speakers at the public forum cannot ask questions of council laws, or council staff. When addressing the council, speakers at public forums must comply with this code and all other relevant codes of council's policies and procedures, must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of council's code of conduct, or making any potentially defamatory statements. If the chairperson considers that a speaker of the public forum has engaged in the conduct of this type, they may request the person to refrain from the inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Before we move to the first speaker, the issue before us, of course, is the development that's being proposed at South West Rocks. And so all those people who have travelled in today, I welcome you. And I hopefully will get a lot of respectful listening to our speakers. And I'm sure our councillors will have lots of questions to ask. So we'll proceed straight away with our first speaker. And that speaker is Laura Kennedy from the Voices of South West Rocks. Mr. Barragood, do we need to move a camera or so? Oh, it's changed, right? You're now on the screen. Yes.
Okay.
Right, the floor is yours, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for hearing us today, and thank you for all of the work you've done so far on the RISE development and the effort put into the legal proceedings. I'm speaking today on behalf of Voices of Southwest Rocks Community Inc., and I would like to acknowledge that we are standing on Dunghutti country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Southwest Rocks community has made it very clear that we do not support this RISE development going ahead. We pushed back on it 30 years ago when the first DA came out in the 90s, and we pushed back on it again in the last couple of years when the new DA came out. RISE development has not made any effort to consult with Southwest Rocks community or the Dunghutti custodians. In fact, if anything, they haven't answered our questions and they have removed our comments from social media. This development has no social licence. The ruling from the LEC, this latest ruling, it sets new case law for what constitutes establishment works on a zombie DA, and it supersedes common sense. These 30-year-old DAs, they are based on outdated environmental planning policy. And this new precedent further erodes the ability of our local government to ensure appropriate and sustainable development for the Shire. It also has impacts for other zombie DAs that could be in play for the Shire and potentially the wider New South Wales state. Tourism is a really significant economic driver for Southwest Rocks, and we know that tourists come because they love the natural beauty and the unique wildlife of the rocks. As the sign used to say on the way in on the Macleay Valley Way, welcome to paradise. Every time we destroy the natural beauty, we further erode our sustainable economic advantage. This development will completely change the vista of Southwest Rocks. It will be seen from Trial Bay, and it will erode our village charm. We should be leaning into these natural values as an ecotourism destination. The site is home to 6 threatened species, and to say that removing habitat will not have a detrimental impact is short-sighted, to say the least, and not factual. Current planning and environmental laws state, in the first instance, environmental harm should be avoided. And I know the Biodiversity Development Assessment report said that they found no koalas on the site, but I can tell you as a resident of Southwest Rocks, and I'm sure any other resident of Southwest Rocks will say, we see koalas at Brighton Park, we see them at Horseshoe Bay, we see them further down at Gregory Street. That site is an important wildlife corridor for them. If we are going to double our koala population, which we are trying to do, we need to hang on to every bit of habitat, every single koala food tree that we have. I know RISE has said they'll be planting more koala food trees, which will result in a net gain, but these trees will not be appropriate for the koalas for another 20 plus years. Young koala food trees are poisonous for koalas. In 20 to 30 years, the New South Wales government predict that the koala will be extinct in New South Wales. It will be too late. We need to act now. As a community, we are also concerned about the impacts of sea level rise and flooding and acid sulfate soils on the site. Predictive mapping of 2100, so 80 years away, shows that that site is at high likelihood from sea level rise inundation. We've seen just in the last 3 years what building on flood-prone land can do. And we've also seen that it isn't the developer that picks up the tab on that. It is the council and the local community that will bear the brunt of those costs. I know the costs of appeal are high, but the long-term costs of not appealing are higher. We also have concerns about the wetlands abutting this site. They are significant sensitive wetlands.
30 seconds to go.
Any disruption to the soil there could have a devastating impact on Saltwater Creek. Voices of Southwest Rocks community, we strongly urge Council and support Council to appeal this decision by the LEC.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any councillors who have a question for Ms Kennedy?
Hello.
Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lara, very much. As you all know, I live in Southwest Rocks, have done for 25 years. I really support your efforts, and I thank Council very much for their efforts in this appeal. When it boils down to it, and we're going to go into a discussion and we're going to talk about it confidentially, and then we'll come back out.
We have a question, please, Councillor.
Yeah, my question is, would or do you think that the community in Southwest Rocks would, if possible, work with this developer to maintain the zoned off areas that are still on that map until the 19th of April, because that's going to be the crucial bit, and then the appeal process ends at that time? Would you be prepared to work with RISE to maintain the existing koala food trees and the zoning that Justice Moore or Commissioner Moore stipulated in the last appeal, so that we can constructively work together?
Yes. We have always stated that we would love to work with RISE. We would love to have the environment put first, and we are happy to work with them, to consult with them and have them hear our requests for that site.
Thank you very much, because I think that could be on the cards.
Thank you, Councillor Riddington. I'd also like to ask a question, if I may. The expert for the developer spoke recently and talked about the fact that there are no koalas evident in the trees, the koala trees at the moment. How far back would that study go, and have you any witnesses who have seen koalas on that site at any time?
Yeah, I believe that study was done in 2021 or 2022. I did listen to the court discussions on Monday, and I think, you know, the methodology does sound very robust, but I think we do have sightings of koalas very close to that land, and they would have come from the national park. It does not make any there's no common sense there that says they're only using the wildlife corridor on the other side of the creek. They are definitely coming in behind, you know, on the Phillip Drive side of the creek. We don't have any sightings, unfortunately, and I do think that this is partly because our koala population is heavily under strain. We lost 5 koalas this year to date, but we know there is, and that included joeys. We know there's koalas there. We know that we just need to give them a helping hand to thrive, and they can, as long as we don't take any more habitat and we don't put any more stress on their population.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson has a question.
Thank you, Lara, for your presentation today. Are you aware that the DAs on these sites, like the zombie DA issues, are a state government issue?
I am aware, yes. Yeah. And look, I would love to. Sorry, did you have more to your question?
No.
Sorry, Councillor Patterson. I am aware it's a state government issue. We, Voices of Southwest Rocks community, have been campaigning state government so hard, and we actually would love to see some of those planning controls brought back to local government. because I don't think the state government completely, they're sitting far away from here. They don't have oversight of what is happening on the ground and what community is saying in response to these developments.
Yeah.
So if there is any work that you're doing to also, lobby state government to get some of those controls back, we would love to also help you do that.
Mm-hmm. So this next question, and I mean with all respect, where do you live?
South West Rocks.
Okay. The part of South West Rocks that you live in, was it developed?
Yeah, it really was. Do you know when it was developed? It was developed in the 2000s, so even after this DA.
Yeah.
But this is my point exactly. Yeah. The science has changed. We know better now. We need to do better now. This is our last decade to stop catastrophic climate change. So if we continue to do things the old way, the 20, 30-year-old way, we're going to irreversibly change the Shire, either by removing the tourist dollars that we get currently or not having enough infrastructure to keep up with demand. There's a lot of concerns.
And another question to you. I mean, council, as you know, it represents the whole community. The whole community is quite large. Council's possibly looking at a future rate variation to help with the costs, ongoing rise of costs to manage. If you had control of council's budget, and you understand that council's already challenged this DA and then it's been reversed, how much of the budget would you spend on challenging the DA?
Look, I don't have control of council's budget, but if you do want to give me that job, I'm here. But what I will say is that if there is a strong case for appeal, you also have the option to have Rise foot the bill on all of these legal costs. So if that is an opportunity, I would be going for it. I would also say that South West Rocks Community Inc., we are also looking at all of our avenues to see if we can get some philanthropic donations to help cover some of these legal costs.
Yeah.
Because we do understand that this is a big financial burden and South West Rocks is just one part of the Shire. But as I also said, this is new case law. This actually could impact other zombie DAs in the Shire. Do we want to keep going through this again and again every time you say no to a construction certificate because the conditions of consent have lapsed? I don't think we do.
Yeah, so just...
Councillor Patterson again.
Just to finish, so in your representation of the voices of South West Rocks, would you, either which way that this decision goes today, would you continue your voices to state government and maybe further on?
Yeah, 100%. This is just one development that we have in South West Rocks that is more than 10 years old. We actually would like to see a moratorium on all zombie DAs and then a review of them to ensure that they're coming up to current SEP.
Yeah.
And so yes, we will be continuing that. We've written a lot of letters. We're working with some members of the Legislative Council. That is 100% one of our goals.
And to finish, is can you also understand that here we are as councillors, 9 councillors representing the Macleay, that today we've got to make an important decision, and either which way we want the best for our Shire?
Oh, 100%. I completely acknowledge that we all want the same. We all genuinely want the same thing for the Rise site, and we all want the same thing out of this. And I completely understand the decision that you have to make is a very tough one. You're going to have to take in a lot of different perspectives and information to make that decision. You have our support in an appeal, but you also will continue to have our support in lobbying state government to fight these zombie DAs.
And one final comment, Laura, I see a future councillor in you.
I rule that out of order as it's not a question, Councillor Patterson, but I understand. Lara, thank you very much for your presentation today. I don't see any other lights on, and we accept your information and we will take it into consideration when we're making our decisions later. Thank you very much, and I now ask our second speaker, who is Warren Bailey, who is from South West Rocks, and he's against the recommendation. And Mr. Bailey, you're going to have a presentation as well. Thank you.
I may. So thank you for the opportunity, and we really appreciate you consulting with the community. My name is Warren Bailey, and resident of South West Rocks. Is that better? Yeah. I'm just trying to get technology working. Oh, of course not. Not turned on. Okay. Just press that one.
Just press the forward button. Forward button. Yes, there you go.
Okay. Just by way of introduction and certainly by way of take homes, I've got 3 points to make. There's a definite economic imperative for saving the environment, specifically in Macleay we're talking about. The inappropriate use of outdated DA controls can be avoided in this case, obviously by the appeal, and so it's hence the importance of support for appealing the ruling. This is just a quote from the World Bank. Basically, it's saying that if we muck up the environment, we'll muck up the economy. So this is an old tea Talabine, which I'm actually currently wearing. And it predates the World Bank by 40 years. And it still tells the same story. And it's certainly true of South West Rocks. And I have a graph here, which I could hand around, which basically says, sorry, over 50% of businesses in South West Rocks are linked to the tourist economy somehow. I can pass it around. And so therefore, once again, there's be substantial impact on South West Rocks and, of course, the rest of the Shire if our economy fails or goes backwards. Because people who come to South West Rocks spend money elsewhere. They spend money at Gladstone, they spend money at Scott's Head, all sorts of places, and even up the creek. I mean, I've been a few times with friends to Willawarra pub and places like that. So it's not just we're just not talking about South West Rocks here. We are talking about the Shire. So our environment, just briefly, is obviously the home of many native species. It nurtures our residents. It's great. It's a sense of place there. It's a substantial asset to the Kempsey Shire, not just us. Assets need to be maintained. And it creates wealth for the Shire, provides a competitive market advantage, and it's consistently rated highly in travel sections of newspapers, etc. So, for example, on the right of the screen here, we were rated by the Sydney Morning Herald as one of the 5 classic towns in New South Wales. Sleepy, old-fashioned coastal town, spared of a concrete development, but are getting quick. And also our environment being our advantage. If we mucked it up, we'll lose jobs. The child move jobs and possibly go somewhere else outside the Shire. And to quote the Mayor, we have 685,000 people visit the Shire every year, and 140 odd million was the revenue. So it's pretty obvious that it is important to maintain what we're doing. In relation to the Rise site, it's not insulated from the surrounds. I mean, I heard bits of the judgment, etc. And around it, in the vicinity, there's an Aboriginal burial ground. There's threatened species. There's some substantial wetlands, and there's also Saltwater Creek. So the trouble with these old regulations is that they're not going to be sufficient to be able to quarantine that area from damage. And so while the judgment might be purely on the Rise site, the implications are far wider. So the council's response, I mean, we really do appreciate what everyone's done, both the council and the staff. But this effort, from feedback I get from friends in Sydney, old places, has enhanced the Shire's image as a place to visit. People say, wow, what a great council, they're going forward. They've made the appeal and unfortunately been overturned, but it's a positive image, not a negative image. I understand talking to, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand talking to barristers that they believe there's a reasonable grounds for appeal based on the first what was published. So
30 seconds to go.
Yeah, so I recommend the council vote in favour of lodging an appeal. To me, the benefits of success exceed the cost of failure. And lastly, we need to keep, here we go. We need to sustain the best South West Rocks, not create an inferior version of Port Norcoffs. We need to protect the environment, stay in character, and appeal this development consent.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. There may be some questions for you from councillors now who might seek further information to help them with their decision making. Councillor Riddington, yes, I did see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Warren, and thank you everyone for coming today. I really appreciate it. Warren, again, as I was asking Lara before, if Rise Development, because it's private land and we need to recognise that as private land and let's try and do the best possible outcome we can get for the environment on that land, would you think that the South West Rocks community would be willing to work with Rise if they said that they were going to put in a DA and conform to current environmental assessment values?
That would be a big win. Yeah, of course. If they will conform, then it does remove a lot of our issues. Certainly the DA I have seen, this last DA, there's some, I guess, character things in there, like 5-story building, which we wouldn't be happy about, of course, because that's going to affect tourism. But yeah, working to preserve the environment, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further questions? I'd like to ask you a question, Mr. Barley, if I could. Referring back to what Councillor Whittington was just asking about, have you seen and read the present South West Rocks character statement and the new proposed one? And how do you see this 93 DA fitting in with that? Your microphone's gone, sorry. No, got to press the button and hold it hard till the red light comes on. Got it?
She's got it all. So the question was
about the character statement.
I, from what I've seen of the DA, the one that we recently got, I think the Hampton village side of it is low rise. You can talk about whether you like the architecture or not, but there's that 5-story level building in the middle, which is totally out of character. I mean, getting back to what our advantage is, it's relating to the feel of the place, particularly I think the character statement talks about Hill Street North, part of the older part. Something like that's totally out of character. Like it's just, people, if anything can be seen from the beach at all, it's a real no-no because, the tourists don't want to see buildings from the beach. I was walking the beach with a friend a while back in the night, and the question he made to me was, the statement he made was, hey, this is the only place I know on the coast where you can't see any light from the beach at night. Okay. Magic. So, but to answer your question succinctly, the character, I don't think is in character.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barley. Councillor Riddington, another question, please.
Anthony was first.
I did not see your light, Councillor Patterson. I apologise. Councillor Patterson, and then back to you, Councillor Riddington.
Would I accept your apology, man? Warren, thanks again for your representation today. Like in your presentation, my question to you is: do you think that the Rise of Development will bring more income and jobs to the Macleay at all?
No, I think it's a net. I think it's a net loss, right? Because while you might create a few jobs in construction, if you accept that we have a competitive advantage in our current form, then anything that's out of character will, over time, in the longer term, will cost us tourist income and jobs. So in the long term, could be a short-term gain, but there'll be long-term pain. So I don't accept it as a long-term proposition. No.
Thank
No.
you.
A couple more questions.
Two more questions, Councillor Patterson. Then we're back to Councillor Riddington,
Yeah,
and then
right.
Councillor Wyatt. So, Councillor Patterson.
Just in relation to South West Rocks, going there since the 60s, coming into South West Rocks, opposite Coles, all bushland, no houses at all. First houses were those few in Struggletown and then near the first service station. Do you remember when the oil tankers used to come into Troll Bay and that the oil tanks were themselves lined up along Phillip Drive? Do you think South West Rocks now is better that all that's gone?
Your microphone's off again, sorry. Got to hold your mouth just right.
Yeah.
Now, you never had it.
I believe the fact that there's a combination of two things. I believe that, firstly, for the local people, it's a great place to live, and having heavy trucks, etc., travelling through is not a great idea. From the point of view, once again, I keep harking back to tourism. To me, that's the future, and so of the income of the South West Rocks, if it's sustainable, I keep mentioning that term sustainable, but it's sustainable over time. It creates jobs built on an income which will continue. So I believe something we're better off focusing on that.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Question, Warren. I probably should ask this to Lara when she was speaking, but Warren, what would you think of the development if it was actually constructed to current EPA rulings and laws?
Well, that's a big tick, but once again, looking at the current DA, I believe it's out of character, and so on that basis, I wouldn't be happy with it. But it would be a big improvement, of course, if we can keep the environment pristine, because that's what we're after. We're trying to preserve what's around it.
So that was a yes from you that it was current EPA.
I'll give it a half. Yeah.
Good on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Riddington and then Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you. Thanks, Warren. My question is, again, leading on from like a consultative and collegiate approach, if we can, with RISE. With the second DA, stage 1, it's got 3 apartment blocks, about 5 stories. And then stage 2, another 2. I think there's 5 blocks altogether. My question is, Warren, if we could get rid of the apartment blocks, would that go a long way to working together to get proper architectural or proper designed housing on that site?
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert at any of this, but my personal view is, and for what I remember of the sketch of the tall building and the round, it would go a long way to be staying in character.
I would agree, and I know that I'm not asking you a question, but my vote is never above the tree line. Just want to make that clear.
And certainly anything that can be seen from the beaches and total destruction.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Councillor Riddington. Any statement you like can be converted to a question, I'm sure. Councillor Wyatt, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren and Lara, for your presentations. I want to ask you a question about the tourism economy at South West Rocks. Mm-hmm. It's an argument that's tossed around a lot. Affordable housing, renting, working, all that kind of thing. And you mentioned, so I'm asking you, what is your experience of the tourism economy in South West Rocks? The current service standards, the current satisfaction and staffing. For example, I know in other parts of the Shire that they cannot get staff to service those coastal industries. And I also know my own child has been abused on and off at
Councillor White, can we just stick with
the question about the
question, please?
Yeah, the question is about what's your experience of the tourism economy out there? Do you have enough staff? Are people satisfied with their experience? Can they find somewhere to live?
Okay, so it's 3 questions. So I'm fine with. There's signs up everywhere wanting staff. There's no doubt, and in fact, I once thought I'm now being retired for 8 years unemployable, but I think I could actually get a gig making coffee in town. So it's pretty bad when I can get a job. The question was about. Sorry, what was your second question?
The staffing levels and
No.
tourism satisfaction. So tourism come to stay at these magnificent places and they expect a level of service. Do you think that level of service is being provided at Southwest Rocks, and therefore if that level of service isn't provided, does that not damage business reputation of council and Southwest Rocks?
Well, I do hear the odd frustration around mainly because of lack of staff. I mean, we know that Southwest Rocks, dare I say, is not a place for fine dining, but that's the way it is. It's part of its charm. So I think the service levels are adequate, and there are some places which people love to go to, usually takeaway stuff. Could it be improved? Yeah, of course. But once again, if we take it too upmarket fine dining, it's going to destroy the character as well. So it could be improved, but it's not too bad. The third question.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, you have no further questions. And Mr. Bailey, thank you very much. I must remind councillors that some of the questions we're having asked are nothing to do with the appeal. And yes, we should promote Southwest Rocks, but this isn't what's before council at today's meeting, and your questions should be on that task as much as you can. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bailey, and thank you for the audience for being here today. We'll now proceed with the extraordinary council meeting now, and we'll go through the agenda as listed. Our opening prayer today will be given to us by Councillor Butterfield.
Thank you. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen.
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 I now ask Councillor Bain to give us acknowledgement of country.
Areng Marang. Tangati Guten Pariditten. Nyana Bubita. Nyana Bubarwa Bukul. Bandunga Kai Malamangu. Tangati Guten Ditten Bari. Tanang Maranga Ditinjabariya Marangbu. I said, good morning. This is Tangati country. From the river and the hills, from the plains, from the mountains to the ocean. This is Tangati country. May we be well in this place. Thank you.
And I just add to that, we acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us today. I now ask Councillor Patterson to give acknowledgement of servicemen, women and families.
I just want to show acknowledgement to all those that made the sacrifice by Australian servicemen and women and their families, in particular those who gave their lives in defence of the freedoms that we enjoy today in fantastic country of Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Move now to item 4 on the agenda, which is apologies and applications for leave. As all councillors are here and present, we can say that is nil need of attention. I now move to item 5 on the agenda, disclosures of interest. Are there any councillors here who would like to disclose interest in any item on the agenda? And there's only one. Councillor Bain.
I'd like to disclose a non-significant, non-pecuniary conflict of interest, as I've had been in close communication with the community and voices of Southwest Rocks. However, that will not affect my deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in the fact that I have a business that operates over the Macleay and I do work in Southwest Rocks.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. We have those disclosures recorded. Thank you. Moving on. We now come to confidential matters, and it's item 6 on the agenda. And there is a motion, a recommendation from staff that be moved. It's on the bottom of page 8. Do I have a councillor who wishes to move that recommendation? Councillor Saul. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Patterson. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Saul?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it's quite straightforward. We'll move into confidential and discuss the matter.
Okay. Is there any discussion or against?
Can I just say, my
Councillor Patterson, you wish to speak?
This discussion is the fact that we need to go into confidential, and I'd like to thank the audience, the people who've come here today in the gallery to represent.
Yes, I don't think that's necessary, but yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So I will put the motion that's before you, moved by Councillor Saul. Is there any dissent? If not, I declare it carried. And like Councillor Patterson, I too thank all people for attending today. We will now go into the confidential session and Order. Would members of the public please sit? We're about to start. We there yet?
Yeah, that's on this.
No, but are we streaming? Are we streaming?
Are we streaming? Yes.
Right. Thank you very much. We're back in open council. I thank the members of the public gallery for persevering and waiting outside and enjoying our wonderful courtyard. We have had a very respectful and careful debate by all councillors along a lot of issues involved in this, and we are now going to deal with item 7.1, which is the main agenda item we're dealing with today. We have a recommendation on page 9, and I'm going to seek a mover to move a motion. It could be this one or a similar one, and we'll then debate that motion and have a decision made. Councillor Bain, would you like to move a motion? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Manager Thorogood, could you please put the motion we discussed on the board? And I would like to move that council acknowledges community sentiment regarding the 2 Phillip Rise development, as it says on the board, and that based on the information contained in the confidential briefing paper, council reluctantly accepts that an appeal would pose an unacceptable financial and reputational risk and does not pursue a further appeal in the matter of 2 Phillip Rise development versus Kempsey Shire Council 2023.
So you're moving that?
I move that.
I need a seconder. Councillor Patterson, you'll second it? Councillor Bain, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
I would, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's a very difficult decision that we're making here today. And in order to reach this decision, the council we have considered a wide range of views of the environmental concerns, protection of coastal wetlands, but also the realities of state legislation and the financial and reputational risk to our council of moving forward with an appeal. My heart cries out to appeal against this. However, the reality is that on advice that it's not, that the risk is not acceptable, and therefore I reluctantly and very sadly commend this motion to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Do we have another speaker for or against? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. This is through to the General Manager. Have we got an estimation of costs so far to Council on this matter?
Mr. Mayor, point the Council to the financial impact aspect of the report. Our costs to date are upwards of $150,000.
Right. And Mr. General Manager, where would those funds be coming from?
They come out of the general fund.
Okay. So upon this notice motion being resolved in this current way, what does this mean for the actual development and starting from the possible clearing to the DA coming through for construction?
The developer, based on the consent that was required to be issued earlier in the week, has been able to commence work as of this morning, and they have done that in line with the valid construction certificate. What this results in is that the areas that were agreed in the undertaking with the court earlier in the week, come the 19th of April, those areas will no longer be covered by that undertaking, and they go back to the original construction certificate and the scope of clearing they're permitted in that.
One other question, Mr. General Manager. In your communications with the proponent, Rise Developments. Do you believe that they are going to go ahead with the current 93 DA of a resort building? Is that something that they do, a development that was designed 30 years ago, or do you think they may move towards something that will be more environmentally friendly to current EPA rulings?
The current position with Rise Development is they've got a 1993 DA that's been deemed commenced by a legitimate court. They've got a construction certificate that's an appropriate construction certificate under that development application that they can act on. They've also submitted another development application to us. So where they finally end, I don't know. That will be up to the developer.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson, did you wish to speak in favour of the motion?
Yeah, I'm speaking in favour of this motion as I
second it, yes.
I back up Councillor Bain's points that councillors all work together to come up with, I suppose, we need to be financially responsible. We need to be responsible to the whole of our community, and it is a hard decision to make, but it's one of those many decisions that an elected body like our council and our fantastic fellow councillors here, that we are together to make those decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the general public and on this recording, this has been agonising, completely agonising. As a resident of Southwest Rocks for a long time, the work that's been done on this by council staff has been absolutely brilliant. We did not bring these actions on ourselves. We have defended these actions in court, and at the moment we have had a ruling against us. The confidential advice that we've received, I do not wish to go into. However, on the advice, I have come to the conclusion that we will face a very real risk of losing in this appeal court. So therefore, taking into consideration our financial position, our reputational position, which really goes, I really, really appreciate the council, but to me, it really hurts me in my heart. I wish we could appeal it, but I really don't think, in all honesty and good faith, and on the legal advice that we've received.
Order.
Sorry.
Advice within confidential you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, advice in confidential that we have received, we're not to proceed. So I'm really, really sorry. Let's hope that people power will take over now and get us a political solution with the state government, because I honestly believe this law is a danger across the whole of New South Wales, and we all need to band together and fight these zombie DAs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor White, please.
Thank you. I wish to speak against this motion. Firstly, I want to thank the leadership team for all the work that you have done in pursuing this matter, and I particularly want to thank Director Jackson's team for all of their efforts and having the courage and the integrity to apply the law and not issue the construction certificate in the first place based on what you believe constitutes. In the years since 1993, the provisions of what constitutes physically construction have been strengthened. I think it was in 2020 that it changed. The situation has arisen because a third party dug a hole about so big on the Rise property. That third party, Caltex, did not do that borehole to test acid sulfate soils. However, the Land and Environment Court found that it had satisfied that 1993 consent, and therefore the construction certificate requirements of the EPA Act were met. This is a 30-year-old development application approval, and it effectively allows time to stand still for that piece of land. A lot has happened in 30 years. The earth processes continue to move. That's just primary school geography. In living memory, the Macleay River has changed its course so that it now opens at Southwest Rocks. Our Raccoon House used to be waterfront, which is now on the western side of Phillip Drive. The Trial Bay breakwall, which was constructed by the Trial Bay prisoners in the 1900s, silted up the bay so that people had to walk right out to the breakwall to get to the water. That breakwall is now collapsing and the water is pushing inland again. The creek through Arakoon National Park has broken through the dunes. The trees have collapsed and there is now a small patch of sand now. And there have been many more threatened species and threatened ecological communities that have been added to the Biodiversity Conservation Act Schedule 1 and 2 in the ensuing time. I understand that I'm to make a decision about an appeal or not, but these are the reasons for me making my decision. I listened to the 3rd of April evidence from the ecologist who prepared the assessment reports for RISE. What I heard and my understanding is that he talked about best practice versus statutory obligations. He acknowledged and made recommendations in his report. Am I allowed to mention? His name was Mr. Robertson, I think. Yeah, Carl Robertson, I think. He acknowledged and made recommendations in his report for vegetation retention, erosion and sediment control works. When questioned by the judge why these were not included in the final vegetation plan and the erosion plan, he indicated that he was implementing his statutory provisions relevant to 1993 and not best practice. This was pressed by the judge, best practice. That was a light bulb moment of disappointment for me and disillusionment for me. So RISE is allowed to clear fell that site. RISE is allowed to build towers to as high as they like. RISE is allowed to remove old growth swamp mahogany trees, which is koala food trees. And they're not required to do any biodiversity offsets. None of this which would be permitted in today's laws. In fact, Council's own structure plan, which I don't know how many tens of thousands you've spent on putting that out, recommends that 8.3 building height be put on there. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. Yeah. Planning law's intent is to protect cultural and environmental values as well as social, economic and community values whilst providing for responsible development. I have a professional association in South West Rocks for 20 years. I feel the intent of the planning laws has become unbalanced at South West Rocks. I believe there are environmental, economic and social implications for developing that land on RISE, which has been allowed to stand still. I feel that as one area of council business, I am suitably qualified to make these assessments and observations, unlike the financial side of our council business. I completely understand and accept the position of other councils, the cost impact, but I have to uphold my ethics and my values and my social licence and my integrity, and I am opposing this recommendation. So I have a question. The developer has been in contact with council and councillors, and to be honest, I think it sounds like a victim impact statement. We don't know what is on the table today. We don't know. I can't determine whether there is genuine intent for that developer to negotiate with anyone. Clearing has started today, and on the 19th of April, all that land will be cleared or can be cleared. But yeah, on the 19th of April, all that land can be cleared. So the areas that are set aside today, that can be cleared on the 19th of April. My question is RISE authentically and genuinely willing to negotiate on the vegetation clearing, reducing their footprint and reducing the height of their buildings?
Thank you, Councillor White. You did that in 10 seconds. Well done. Mr. General Manager, do you want to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the experiences we've had and the ongoing discussions with RISE developments, they certainly are saying they wish to protect the natural environment in ways they can. The next few weeks, and once the undertaking is lifted, will demonstrate, I think, to the community how valid that statement from RISE is.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I would also like to address the issue that's facing us, in that we have these developments from 30 years ago with conditions from 30 years ago that in this case has been found to be commenced, and the court has found it has commenced. But it doesn't put aside the environmental protection that we now know in 2023 that's necessary. as was addressed to us by Lara Kennedy from the Voices of Southwest Rocks, the trees that are on the site at present, there are 13 according to the evidence, they will be replaced by 30 in the future, but they will then take 20 to 30 years to grow. That's the evidence suggested to us. So it's a real challenge, and it's repugnant for me to actually have to think about not appealing. But to me, we are in a position where financially and ethically, we have to protect the whole interest of Kempsey Shire. So even though we have a tsunami of environmental impacts happening upon us, like the almost certain extinction of koalas within 30 years, those koala food trees will be possibly after the 19th, as Councillor White said, bulldozed. So I appeal to the developer to show your genuine consideration of the environment and make a commitment, an immediate commitment, today if possible, that all 13 trees will be protected. I cannot force, and council cannot force that developer to follow that request, but I'm hoping that the environmental wishes of, as outlined in the letter to all councillors received last night from the developer, that intention to protect the environment can be demonstrated immediately by protecting those trees that are on the site that are protected by the order until the 19th of April. So I'm saying to the developer, show us your real intentions and come out today if possible and commit to protecting those koala food trees that are essential to enable koalas into the future, and not just the koalas, but the birds that use the trees for nesting, especially the ones with hollows, and the phascogales and the greater owl that are in that area that could use it. So thank you. So I'm saying we need to protect the environment, but in this instance, we cannot do any further, and that's why I'm supporting the motion as put up by Councillor Bain. Is there any further debate? I have a light on from Councillor Patterson who wishes to ask a question. Thank you.
Through to the General Manager.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
In relation to possible variations, noting that the 1993 DA, which I have up on my screen at the moment, and the conditions of consent, section 3A, is overall height of the building should not exceed 4 levels comprising of 3 stories and habitable rooms and 1 level of parking. In DA variations, how much further up or down will that variation be allowed, understanding that I believe that there's no height restrictions on that particular area at the moment, but does that section of the DA of 93 put a height restriction on that?
Yeah, Mr. General Manager, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, currently all the developer has is a construction certificate for clearing the site. That is all they're permitted to do. They would then need, if they wish to act on this, seek a construction certificate for that building, and those areas would be dealt with through that construction certificate process. Their alternative is to act on the current construction certificate and clear whatever aspects of the land they wish, and then to submit another DA, and we've seen that, and the public have seen a subsequent DA that has come in and been advertised. So the matter or the question that you're asked can't be answered at this particular point in time because they simply have a construction certificate simply for clearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Patterson, for the question. Councillor Ring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak for this motion. I was born in 1994. This development application was put in before I was even born, and I'm sitting here today making a decision that I don't think a lot of our generation would think that we would have to make. I appreciate the sentiments of the community and those who spoke on public forum. There is obviously a really big picture and it's a really complex issue, and this decision we make today isn't the only decision that is going to be made when it comes to the environment, when it comes to South West Rocks. And I think I appreciate the fact that not every decision we make is going to be an easy one or what the community wants, but there is passion in the community, and there is a recognition of the councillors of how the community does feel, and I think that no matter what happens today, that we sorry, I just want to word this right, but it's really, really hard. That we are listening to you and to keep fighting. And I want to make good decisions, and I don't want the next Kinney Ring to be sitting here in 30 years kicking themselves for a decision that I made. But I also know that based on everything, that I don't believe that we should appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ring. Councillor Butterfield, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm speaking for this motion that Councillor Baines put forward. With the information that all councillors received today, unfortunately, an appeal would more than likely not be successful. So travelling down that road for council is not an option. But I do understand that this is quite sensitive to the people at the community of South West Rocks, and just to understand that the Kempsey Shire has done everything possible to listen to you and get the best outcome. But I'm just hoping that I'm all for development, but obviously with this DA back in 1993, the restrictions were very, very broad. So with that, there's not a whole lot council can actually do from here. But just hopefully in the future with new DAs and new environmental laws that we can develop the Kempsey Shire and hopefully promote business, housing, and but do it the right way. So hopefully there's a favourable outcome from this moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butterfield. Councillor White, do you have another question?
I do have a question. In the 30 years, we've also had the Coastal Management Act. We've got coastal use and coastal sensitive areas that are mapped. And we'll get to see our coastal vulnerabilities mapped. But the map does say that this land is a coastal sensitive area. So there's issues all along the coast that are having to be re-engineered to make them stable, such as Byron Bay, Lake Cat-Eye. They've just recently had to reconstruct that. Colorado, Curl, Central Coast.
Question, please.
Yep. The question is, where does the liability sit? Who is liable for the compensation should there be a go bad in the future, such as the houses fall into the creek?
Mr. General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that question, Councillor White. I think at this stage in our society and in our legislation, I don't think there is actually a clear answer to that. It's something that collectively we still have to move to. And I know since I've been here, Hat Head is an area that's been constantly on my mind in relation to that matter. So I don't think there is a clear answer to that at this point in time. And as a society and our politicians through legislation and other means and our insurers are going to have to work through that one still.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Another follow-up question?
So my understanding is that Port Macquarie Hastings Council is paying for that engineering works around Lake Cat-Eye. Crystal balling it, as a general manager in the future of, say, 30 years, would you have concerns about the liability and the compensation having to come out of your general funds?
Mr. General Manager.
I guess there's an issue, and I was just looking at the aerial view across South West Rocks, and the issue of potential coastal inundation there runs right along Phillip Drive, not just relation to this site. It literally is something that runs right along Phillip Drive. So it's something that is a concern now and will continue to be a concern for any of the councils up and down the coast that have low-lying communities.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Another question?
Based on that, based on that information, we know that those properties along Phillip Drive might have an issue. So therefore, I'm still questioning that. Oh no, don't worry about it.
No, that's not a question, but thank you for that comment. Councillor Saul, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, again, this has been a long, drawn-out decision. We've taken our time this morning. We've had advice. We've had discussions within councillors trying to find a way forward with this issue. It hasn't been easy. We've heard on many sides about what the community believe in some different sections. But, Mr. Mayor, it comes down to a matter of risk and cost. We were informed it may be very low odds of success in this appeal. And then we'd have to go back to community and say we've now spent X amount of dollars and we've actually failed in our appeal. That then comes out of our budgets, and we have to then determine what services are then lost or foregone because we have spent this money. So, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, we don't have any choice. We have to accept the recommendation and move with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Is there any further debate? If not, I'll be putting the motion. Of course, with the mover in reply first, but I'm just looking at any other debate. If not, I'll ask Councillor Bain to close debate and then we will take our vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very serious matter, and I thank Councillor White for pointing out the environmental degradation and the potential risks that will come from this. And I agree entirely. However, we are faced with a legal decision about a hole in the ground, and whether that hole in the ground was what purpose was it there for, and what did it relate to. I believe that I've moved this because I believe we've lost this fight. Basically, it does not mean that we are giving up. There are, moving forward in the future, we can lobby state government to return power to local communities and to fight the planning powers that enable these zombie DAs. Coming up in the not too distant future, we have a review of our local environment plan. Council can work at that to strengthen environmental protections going forward into the future and to empower traditional owners. And we need to work with all stakeholders in working to protect the environment and get some sane development happening. And I am very, very reluctant and sad to amend this motion to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. I'll be asking for anyone who dissents from the motion for you. Any dissents? We have one dissent. I declare it carried. And there is no further business before Council. I'm about to close the meeting, but I thank members of the public gallery for your attention and concern for the future of Kempsey Shire. And thank you for being here today. And councillors, I thank you too for all your efforts to come up with a decision that we can accept. Thank you all, and have a great Easter break, everyone.